Ananta Koti Vaishnava Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Jai Gaur Premanandi. All glory to some of the bodies, all glory to some of the bodies, all glory to some of the bodies, all glory to Sri Guru and Sri Guranga, all glory to Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaurabha Karinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mishma Bhavana Canto 10, Chapter 82, verse 31. Sri Sukha Uvacha Nanda Statra Yadun Praptan Gyatva Krishna Parogaman Tat Agamad Vrito Gopaya Anasta Artaya Tedrikshaya
Nanda Prapta Yadva Krishna Progama Tatra Gope Sate
Sukha Uvacha. Sukadev Goswami said, Nanda, Nanda Maharaj, Tatra, there, Yadun, the Yadus, Praptan, arrived, Gatva, finding out, Krishna, Lord Krishna, Pura Gaman, keeping in front, Tatra, there, Agamat, he went, Vrita, accompanied, Gopaya, by the cowherds, Anna, on their wagons, Sta, place, Arthai, whose possessions, Dadrikshaya, wanting to see. Translation: Sukadev Goswami said, when Nanda Maharaj learned that the Yadus had arrived, led by Krishna, he immediately went to see them. The cowherds accompanied him, and their various possessions loaded on their wagons. Purport: the cowherds of Raja were planning to stay at Kurukshetra for some days, so they came equipped with adequate provisions, especially milk products and other foods for the pleasure of Krishna and Balaram. Seeing Nanda, the Vrishnis were delighted and stood up like dead bodies coming back to life. Having felt much distress at not seeing him for a long time, they held him in a tight embrace. Vasudeva embraced Nanda Maharaj with great joy. Beside himself with ecstatic love, Vasudeva remembered the troubles Kamsa had caused him, forcing him to leave his sons in Gokul for their safety. O hero of the Kurus! Krishna and Balaram embraced their foster parents and bowed down to them. But their throats were so choked up with tears of love that the two lords could say nothing. Purport: after a long separation, a respectful child should first offer obeisances to his parents. Nanda and Yasodha gave their sons no opportunity for this, however, for as soon as they saw them, they embraced them. Only then could Krishna and Balaram offer their proper respects. Raising their two sons onto their lap and holding them in their arms, Nanda and saintly Mother Yasodha forgot their sorrow. Purport: Srila Vishnu Chakravarti explains that after the initial embraces and obeisances, Vasudeva led Nanda and Yasodha into his tent as they held the hands of Krishna and Balaram. Following them inside were Rohini, other women and men of Vraja, and a number of attendants. Inside, Nanda and Yasodha took the boys on their laps. Despite having heard the glories of the two lords of Dwarka, and despite seeing these opulences now before their eyes, Nanda and Yasodha looked upon them as if they were still their 8-year-old children. Then Rohini and Devaki both embraced the Queen of Raja, remembering the faithful friendship she had shown them. Their throats choked with tears, they addressed her as follows. Report: at this time, according to Srila Vishnu Chakravarti, Sri Vasudeva invited Nanda outside to meet Ugrasena and the other elder Yadus. Taking this opportunity, Rohini and Devaki talked with Queen Yasodha. Rohini and Devaki said, "What woman could forget the unceasing friendship you and Nanda have shown us, dear Queen of Raja? There is no way to repay you in this world, even with the wealth of Indra." Before these two boys had ever seen their real parents, you acted as their parents and gave them all affectionate care, training, nourishment, and protection. They were never afraid, good lady, because you protected them just as eyelids protect the eye. Indeed, saintly persons like you never discriminate between outsiders and their own kin. Purport: as Srila Vishnu Chakravarti explains, Krishna and Balaram had not seen their parents for two reasons: because of their exile in Vraja, and also because they are never actually born and therefore have no parents. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti also describes what Devaki thought before speaking this verse. Alas, because for so long these two sons of mine had you, Yasodha, as their guardian and mother, and because they were immersed in such a vast ocean of ecstatic loving dealings with you, now that you are once more before them, they are too distracted to even notice me. Also, you are behaving as if insane and blind with love for them, showing millions of times more maternal affection than I possess. Thus, you simply keep staring at us, your friends, without recognizing us. So let me bring you back to reality on the pretext of some affectionate words. Then, when Devaki failed to get any response from Yasodha, even after addressing her, Rohini said, "My dear Devaki, it's impossible just now to rouse her out of this ecstatic trance. We are crying in the wilderness, and her two sons are no less bound up by the ropes of affection for her than she is for them. So let us now go outside and meet with Prita, Draupadi, and others." So here we find a description of the meeting of Krishna with and Balaram with Nanda and Yasodha, particularly. And we see here that the affection between Krishna, Balaram, and Nanda and Yasodha is very spontaneous. They did this in the presence of Rohini and Devaki. And there was a difference in their emotions. Nanda and Yasodha had very strong emotions for Krishna and Balaram, and they regarded Krishna and Balaram as their children. And thus they put them on their laps, etc. In spite of the fact that Krishna was now in Dwarka and he was much older. Of course, he did not age in the sense like normal people do, so he didn't age beyond the time that he had left Vrindavan. Nevertheless, his whole his clothing and his manners and the respect he got from others was quite different. But Yasodha and Nanda disregarded that completely. Children in Vrindavan, and they put them on their laps, and they were showing them great affection as they had done in Vrindavan. In spite of the fact that Rohini and Devaki were there. Now Rohini, of course, could understand the nature of Nanda and Yasodha's love, because she had been in Vrindavan and witnessed everything there, and she could also appreciate very much. Devaki, on the other hand, had never seen the interaction of Nanda and Yasodha with Krishna. because she was in Mathura, imprisoned by Kamsa. So very looked very strange when she saw what was happening here. This spontaneous love. And she regarded Krishna as her child. And she regarded Nanda and Yasodha as not the parents of Krishna. They were just taking care of them. So that's how she explains everything. Oh, very nice. You took care of our children when we were not able to. But she doesn't regard them as the real parents. On the other hand, Krishna takes Nanda and Yasodha as his parents. He regards them as his parents, not as their foster parents or step parents or whatever. And his response to them is stronger than his response to Vasudeva and Devaki. So the responses on both sides, Krishna responding to Mother Yasodha and Nanda Maharaj, and Nanda and Yasodha responding to Krishna, quite different from the relationship between Devaki and Krishna. And therefore, Devaki was very astonished. How is it that I'm the mother, yet these persons who are not the parents have such intense affection for Krishna? And how is it that Krishna has more affection for them who are not the parents than for me? So both ways, how they can have such affection, how Krishna can have such affection. In other words, Krishna and Balaram forgot completely about Rohini and Devaki there, and they were completely involved with Nanda and Yasodha. So the attraction of Krishna and Balaram was greater for Nanda and Yasodha than for Devaki and Rohini. And Nanda and Yasodha's attraction for Krishna and Balaram was greater than the attraction that Rohini and Devaki had for Krishna and Balaram, even though they were their actual parents. So this was an astonishing phenomenon. But we know that ultimately Krishna is also the eternal son of Nanda and Yasodha. So Vishnu explains that in the spiritual world they're never born, so they're eternally in Vrindavan with Nanda and Yasodha. But and so therefore Krishna was born in both places, and he was therefore the son of Yasodha as well as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. And then Vasudeva took Krishna over the river, and he placed Krishna in the crib with the two children, and then the two Krishnas merged together, and then he took the girl child back. So everyone thought only one child was there, that there were actually two children, but they merged together. So therefore, in this way, this explanation shows that Krishna was the son of Yasodha and Nanda Maharaj also. He wasn't just a foster child, but he was the actual child. On the other hand, in the spiritual world, they're eternally the parents of Krishna. So therefore, their affection is naturally very, very strong. So, in the material world, and when Krishna has his pastimes, Nanda and Yasodha have the privilege of experiencing all of the childhood pastimes from his birth all the way till he's 11 years old.
And these are considered to be the most intense and sweet pastimes. And Devaki did not have that privilege at all. In other words, she was not qualified because her variety of Vatsalya was different from that of Nanda and Yasoda's. So therefore she could not understand that type of love. But Krishna was very considerate, and after he went to Mathura, then he stayed there and accepted the affection of Vasudeva and Devaki, who had been deprived of his childhood pastimes. And he responded to their affection in many ways also. And they were quite satisfied with that. But it was quite different from the affection that Yasodha and Nanda showed to Krishna. So that is illustrated here, where we see Rohini and Devaki standing there in astonishment when they see the great love that Nanda and Yasodha have for Krishna, and correspondingly the love that Krishna and Balaram have for them. They have never seen such a thing. And Nanda and Yasodha were absorbed in this relationship that they couldn't even hear Devaki when she was trying to explain it. Actually, they're my children, but they're our children, but he was taking care of them for us. Completely experiencing something different. They were in a different world because of the great affection between them. So this, of course, is natural because we see even in Vrindavan when periodically there is evidence or reminders of Krishna's greatness, immediately the people of Vrindavan forget that. It's not in their mind anymore. Because of the intensity of their love, they simply forget everything else. So here, Nanda and Yasodha are so absorbed in Krishna and Balaram, in spite of the fact that now they're quite old and they're in Dwarka and surrounded by so many kings. Still, they are completely absorbed in Krishna and Balaram. And if there's any reminders that no, actually he's in Dwarka and he's our children, they're our children, etc. They don't recognize those words at all. They don't hear those words. So this is because of the strength of their love for Krishna and Balaram. It is so intense that they give no regard for anything else, no matter what Devaki can say. They don't think of that. So they take Krishna and Balaram as their children. And we see that Yasodha begins to milk comes from her breasts, etc. That's a sign of her great affection. Spontaneously, milk begins to flow from her breasts because she takes Krishna as her child. So this shows the vast difference between Krishna's relationship and the Yadu's relationship, their mutual relationship, and Krishna's relationship with the people of Vrindavan. They're quite different in their nature. So, of the two, then Krishna is more attracted to this relationship with Nanda and Yasodha. And he's completely absorbed in this. He is never completely absorbed in all these other activities. If there's an opportunity, then he prefers this. However, at the same time, because he is Supreme Lord, he's able to satisfy everybody. So the Yadus never feel that Krishna is neglecting them completely and he's thinking of something else. I'm satisfied with that relationship. Nevertheless, Krishna's hankering for the people of Vrindavan, and particularly the gopis and Nanda and Yasodha. So that strength is shown here by the way in which they exchange with each other. That was Nanda and Yasodha and Krishna and Balaram. So a very intense relationship. So because of this, the intensity of the relationship, then after Devaki speaks, then they ignore her words completely. Then Rohini, of course, has some understanding of the intensity of Nanda and Yasodha's love. So she simply says, better we go away. It's not, they're not going to listen to us anyway. They're so absorbed in Krishna and Balaram that we had better leave. Huh? So Rohini can appreciate the nature of that love more than Devaki can. Huh? So, in other words, they actually here when the people of Vrindavan come to Kurukshetra, we find a meeting which did not take place so much before. Of course, Nanda came to Mathura, but then he left after some time. Now we have Nanda and Yasodha coming to meet the Yadus. And now Krishna is in a very high position. When he first went to Mathura, then he was more or less the same as he was when he left Vrindavan. But then he went to the Gurukul, then he came back, then he started fighting the demons like Jarasandha, then he moved to Dwarka. So his position gradually became stronger and stronger, and he showed more powers and glory, etc. Here we see a complete contrast between the two groups of people. The people of Vrindavan have not changed at all, and they're still the same cowherd people. And now Krishna has become the head of the Yadus in Dwarka, and very, very famous. And all these kings are there as well, giving them worship as described in the previous verses. So Krishna is in a very powerful position now. And then the two groups meet, and we see the great difference. The people of the Yadus and other kings, their view of Krishna is quite different from that of the people of Vrindavan. So in the previous verses, the kings were praising Krishna for his prowess, etc. But the people of Vrindavan have no regard for such words. They're not interested in Krishna as the, let's say, the Supreme Lord, ruling everywhere and purifying all the worlds, etc. So they simply regard Krishna as, Nanda and Yasodha regard Krishna as their child. That's all. A very, very different world. So how can the two mix? How can the two groups mix together? Very difficult. And Krishna is the link between both of them. But then Krishna has to play two roles, two different roles, one for the Yadus and the kings, and one for the people of Vrindavan. But he can do that because he is Supreme Lord, and he can manifest himself and please everyone. No possible for Krishna. But the people of Vrindavan and Nanda and Yasodha and the gopis, they cannot really appreciate the position that Krishna has among the Yadus. And when Krishna tries to give a solution and say because they don't want to separate from each other, then he says, well, you should come to Dwarka. But they refuse because they know that it's not going to be the same. It's like this situation here where there's two different groups of people. And there's a great reminder of that difference, the different regard for Krishna. So when they're in Vrindavan, everybody there is simply regarding Krishna as their child or their friend or their lover, etc., and they don't think of him as Supreme Lord. So that's the perspective that the people of Vrindavan prefer, and therefore they refuse to go to Dwarka. And the only other solution is that Krishna has to come back there and stay with them. And then they will be completely satisfied. So that is the final solution. But in at this particular time, Krishna cannot do that. And therefore, he gives some excuse and says that I will return later. So then, after the meeting in Kurukshetra, again there's separation. And the people return to Vrindavan again, and Krishna goes back to Dwarka, and then later on he fulfills the promise finally. So it's a prolonged type of separation, and here we have a periodic meeting. So how can the people tolerate this? So one explanation is that though there is separation, within that separation there is a meeting, because internally Krishna manifests himself. And in this way there is some satisfaction on the part of the people of Vrindavan. So they don't feel continual pain of separation. Internally Krishna manifests himself, and then they get a little bit satisfied with that. So that's the only consolation they have. Consolation that Krishna gives, and he also gave before when he wrote the letter to the gopis through Uddhava, is that though we are separated in these pastimes, we are not separated in the eternal apricot pastimes. So you simply transfer into those pastimes and have that experience in the spiritual world. So that's another type of satisfaction that they can have. At least they can understand that, in one sense, Krishna never abandons them; he's eternally with them. So, in any case, they tolerate this separation, and the separation is never eternal. It always resolves. So, though in the material pastimes in the material world, it looks like a long time, it resolves eventually, and Krishna finally returns to them, and then they're completely happy at that point. In the spiritual world, such prolonged separation doesn't take place, so it's a little bit different. So, in the material world, why the prolonged pastime? To display the intensity of the love of the people of Vrindavan, and that love becomes more intense in separation. So, therefore, one can understand the intensity of their love by seeing them in the mood of separation. And that is evident here, where after the separation, then Krishna and Balaram meet Nanda and Yasodha again. And they feel such great bliss. And that is portrayed in these verses here. That bliss is so great that they cannot even, they're not even aware of Devaki and Rohini and others present. So this shows how they can experience the highest bliss after that separation. So in one sense it's there to illustrate to the other persons around, and it's also there for other people, that is, people who can hear the Bhagavatam, to show them the intense relationship that the people of Vrindavan have with Krishna. So therefore this prolonged type of separation takes place.
Usually in the Vedic system, when somebody gets married, the parents are invited. We don't see that. Do we see any in the Shastra that Yasodha Nandha were invited for the marriage when it happened in Krishna married so many queens? Also the Yasodha, they didn't have the experience of being grandma. Usually in our system, in the Indian system, when a child is born, the grandmother comes. We never seen the...
Well,
did Yasodha and Nanda, they didn't have the desire to go and see their son in Dwaraka?
Well, ultimately not, because just like they refuse here to go to Dwarka and live there, that would have been a solution, but they refuse that. So also going to witness the marriages, etc., ultimately would be problematic for them because they couldn't relate to it. I think in the Gopal Champu it does mention there that there was maybe some desire on their part to see the marriage, but they gave it up more or less. It wasn't a strong desire. Because the mood is quite different. And of course, on the maybe Nanda and Yasodha would, but the other people like the gopis definitely not.
It's so particular, they don't even give respect to their parents. They just get married without parents' permission. Sometimes people see this mistake. Oh, Krishna did this, we also can do the same thing.
Well, of course, the traditions were a little bit different then also. So we see that there the traditions were, in many cases, they had a battle and they fought, and then Krishna kidnaps Rukmini or something like that, or there's a contest like with the bulls, and then Krishna tames the bulls and he wins the bride that way. So it's a little bit different. It's arranged marriage is one system, then the other, there's so many alternative types of marriage as well. So in this case, I don't know if there ever was an arranged marriage. There was any arranged marriage here with Krishna? No, it's all fighting, usually fighting in contests, etc. So a little bit, and a different system was used.
They never had the chance to serve the mother-in-law. Usually in marriages, the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law bondage is serving each other. Here we don't find Rukmini or Satyabhama, other queens, serving Yasodha and Devaki.
Well, probably Devaki. Probably that was there. Like when Krishna did marry the queens, and particularly the 16,000 queens, even I think, Vasudeva and Devaki were present at all the marriage ceremonies there. So definitely their presence was there, but not Nanda and Yasodha. But the Dwarka forms of parents were there. So that was satisfying.
We find the jiva from one body to another body. It keeps going from one body to another body. And along with that, mind also goes. Like you mentioned that jiva in a different body had a different father. So we had so many fathers and mothers in previous lifetime. So what is the connection between those fathers and the present jiva? Or the same father, when they attach to the son, they may get birth again here. But here we find Yasodha and Nanda, after meeting Krishna, their love is increasing. What about those parents who are with the jivas for many, many years? Does the mind record all the parents' names or the forms inside the mind?
Of course. The jivas have their material bodies and they have their material minds, etc. And in the minds, previous attachments are obviously there, impressions are there. But the jivas do not have such strong love as Krishna and the people of Vrindavan have, or the other Nityasiddhas. They're on a material level, their affairs, so quite temporary on the other hand. But the impressions remain, and though the actual person, the attachment may not be there because there's a confusion between the body and the soul, and they may be attached to the body, not the soul of the person. So then they get next lifetime, and then they're looking out for another body which is quite similar to that body in the previous lifetime, whatever. So that happens for marriages and whatever like that, different attachments to parents to children, or husband to wife, or parents to children, etc. Previous experiences in that will produce similar type of experience in this lifetime, but it's in terms of those bodies. Of course, if they're very advanced, then maybe they will have spiritual attraction, and therefore, when you take the spiritual life, then you're born in a family with devotees, etc., and you can continue devotional service. So the devotional aspect becomes stronger, and then we can say that the souls are more, gravitate towards more spiritual souls then.
The person sees in the material world another person, he feels immediately attached. He thinks that he knows me from many, many lifetimes. Is it because of the previous attachment?
It's possible. Previous lifetimes they had that, not the bodies obviously, but the two jivas. There are cases of group reincarnation where previous people were in one body. Now in the present life they're also different roles, but there's two jivas are related somehow or other like that. So that's possible also. If there is great attachment on one level, then they can have a relationship in the future.
For this reason, the Shraddha rites are recommended. The son does Shraddha rites for the previous forefathers. So wherever they are, they can be happy. The connection.
Yeah, that is to give some pious benefits to those particular jivas wherever they are in a future life.
Gurmaharaj, all the sampradayas doesn't accept the concept of dual appearance of Krishna for both Yashoda and Devaki. And what authority we can talk
Well,
about?
ultimately, in the spiritual world, then Yasodha, Nanda, and Krishna are there eternally. So that's the final praman. So therefore, they're eternally the parents in the spiritual world. Because there's no birth in the spiritual world.
But here on earth, in the Puranas, most of the sampradayas talk about Devaki, Krishna caring for Devaki and being carried out to...
So the final pramana is, anyway, it doesn't matter because eternally they are the parents. Whatever appearance is there. Krishna's actually not the son of Vasudeva and Devaki either because he's not born, he's unborn, he's Aja. He's unborn, he doesn't born to anybody. He's not born at all, so he's nobody's son, ultimately. You know, in terms of ontology, he's nobody's son. But then he is eternally the son of Vasudeva and Devaki and Nanda and Yashoda in the spiritual world.
The acceptance of Goloka. They only have Vaikuntha, maybe that reason.
Yeah.
They don't think there's a separate Goloka. Everything is from Vaikuntha, everything comes. Sri Sampradaya, they don't even accept there's Goloka separate, like what?
Yeah. But there's different scriptures that give those, like Brahma Samhita, and there's other Puranas also will give descriptions of other parts of the spiritual world.
But generally there is not much mention about two Krishnas in Srimad Bhagavatam. Two Krishnas, Vraja Krishna and Uttara Krishna. There is no mention in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Not explicit.
Not explicit.
Not explicit.
But we are able to see that Rohini has an appreciation about Yashoda's position as compared to that of Devaki. Do we understand, is it due to the fact that she had a past experience with Yashoda in Vraja in the past? She had...
Rohini?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only reason.
Yeah. So she has some experience from both places. So she has some qualification for understanding the love that the people of Vrindavan have for Krishna, whereas others don't, other Yadus don't.
Again, Devaki is not able to appreciate, Devaki is able to appreciate the superior position of Yashoda. At the same time, is it that Yashoda is also able to understand her superiority over other mothers like Rohini or Devaki?
Well, she doesn't really have any consciousness of that. She's just conscious of her relationship with Krishna, that's all.
But again, despite Krishna being grown up so much, still the motherly affection, feeding milk and all that takes place with Krishna Balaram. We see that happens even in Chaitanya Leela between Nityananda Prabhu and Nimai when they meet in Nandanacharya's house. Or maybe Malini feeding Nityananda Prabhu. Is it the same kind of relationship?
Vasalya?
Yeah, Nityananda Prabhu, I think Malini also feeds Nityananda.
Yeah.
Though Nityananda Prabhu had grown up so much.
Yeah.
And also we understand that Devaki was deprived of the childhood pastimes of Krishna. And Yashoda and Nanda, they were deprived of the grandchildren's because grandma always loves a child. They both had a similar type of operation.
Well, I suppose so. The compensation, I guess, for Devaki is she could experience the grandchildren, whereas Yashoda couldn't. Separate.
You see, you are explaining regarding this when Vasudeva went to this Nanda Maharaj's house. There, that Vasudeva, although there was a twin, but Vasudeva didn't see twin. He saw only one. Okay, he saw only daughter of Yashoda, and he took it. But can you say that there was also Krishna was there, but Vasudeva was not qualified to see that Krishna? Because there is a twin, correct?
Yeah, Vasudeva didn't see the other Krishna. He just put the child in the crib, and he took the child, the girl child.
So it was because of darkness, or he was not qualified to see that. It was because of darkness, or
it was just dark.
Or he was not qualified to see that Nanda Krishna.
Well, it was dark there, so he just put the child in there, and then he took another child. That's all. So arrangement of the Lord ultimately.
Generally we see the nature of love. This is in the context of Nanda and Yashoda are not willing to move to Dwaraka. But generally the nature of love is that one is willing to sacrifice anything for the lover. So neither we see here Nanda Maharaj, nor Yashoda, or nor Krishna is willing to move here. So how to understand that, Maharaj?
Well, the strength of one, of course, is that that's the eternal relationship. So if there anything less than that is not satisfying to them. And therefore, if they go to Dwarka, then it won't be the same type of relationship. There will be this constant reminder that Krishna is Supreme Lord. So that's not their eternal, mood. So therefore, they can't accept it.
Goes from his work. Rukmani went and saw Radha, something like that. He never decided to go and see the...
Well, generally they're so absorbed in their own particular type of pastimes and bliss that they don't think of anything else of doing something. They don't need vacation because it's a continual festival of being with Krishna wherever they are. Everything is new all the time.
Maharaj, here we see that Devaki is astonished at the love that is expressed by Yashoda. And we also know that usually in sadhana, one has to have that eagerness, and then that creates a qualification. So in this case, she is not qualified, but she is astonished at the love. But then she does not have any aspiration because she is also a mother.
Oh, well, because they are on a siddha level, they've reached their, capacity, and they're satisfied with their particular type of love. So therefore, other types of love are beyond their understanding. Even if they say, oh, it's more intense or whatever, it's a little bit difficult for them to understand.
Maharaj, we also see that here we saw that there are different devotees and they have different kind of a mood. We also see in ISKCON, Maharaj, there are different gurus, and although everybody is under the shadow of Srila Prabhupada, but still there is some difference, some slight variety, I would say, not difference, in each individual spiritual master's mood and also in terms of practices. So is there some comparison? There is some amount of some differences there, Maharaj.
Well, everybody's an individual. Even in the material world, everybody's different. So spiritually also, everybody's different. So they have their own preferences, some of it may be material, but as we advance spiritually, then of course there will be spiritual difference between everybody on all levels as one goes up. And thus, there's opportunity for choosing different forms of the Lord to worship, and then also within Krishna, different rasas.
So we find among the disciples of the same Guru, they have different mood. What to speak of others?
Good, yeah.
Same Guru and the same disciples,
yeah.
They all vary each other. Eating habits, the way they speak.
Yes.
भगवते वासुदेवाय
আমার জীবন সদা পাপেরত নাহিক পুণ্যের লেশ।
আমার জীবন সদা পাপেরত নাহিক পুণ্যের লেশ।
পরের উদ্বেগ দিয়াছি যে কত, দিয়াছি জীবের ক্লেশ।
পরের উদ্বেগ দিয়াছি যে কত, দিয়াছি জীবের প্রেম।
নিজ সুখ লাগি পাপে নাহি ডরি, দয়াহীন স্বার্থপর।
নিজ সুখ লাগি পাপে নাহি ডরি, দয়াহীন স্বার্থপর।
পর সুখে দুঃখী সদা মিথ্যা ভাসি, পর দুঃখ সুখকর।
পর সুখে দুঃখে সদা মিথ্যা ভাসি, পর দুঃখ সুখকর।
অশেষ কামনা হৃদি মাঝে মোর, ক্রোধিদম্ভ পরায়ণ।
অশেষ কামনা হৃদি মাঝে মোর, ক্রোধিদম্ভ পরায়ণ।
মদ মত সদা বিষয়ে মোহিত, হিংসা গর্ব বিভূষণ।
মদ মত সদা বিষয়ে মোহিত, হিংসা গর্ব বিভূষণ।
নিদ্রালস্য হত সুকার্যে বিরত, অকার্যে উদ্যোগী আমি।
নিদ্রালস্য হত সুকার্যে বিরত, অকার্যে উদ্যোগী আমি।
প্রতিষ্ঠা লাগিয়া স্বার্থ আচরণ, লোভ হত সদা কামী।